The Avashtas of Mars are very, very important. I already mentioned how after looking at Saturn's and Sun's Avashtas, the next most important planet to examine is that of Mars. And his Avashtas can really make or break a chart to a great degree. And like I said, if I see problems and they're not caused by Sun's Avashtas or Saturn's Avashtas, they're pretty much invariably going to be caused by Mars's Avashtas. So even when you see that Sun's good and Sun's Avashtas are good and Saturn's Avashtas are good, if you see some real problems with Mars's Avashtas, a really troubled Mars, the person's still going to manage to have some big problems in their life. So it's a very, very important planet. And we can sort of see this how Mars is related to the Sun in that he rules the exaltation of the Sun. What that means is for the Sun to do his best, he needs Mars. So for the king to do his best, he needs his right-hand arm, Mars. He needs his general Mars. Mars is the overseer. So he's the one that overlooks things and gets things done. So the king says, all right, get this job done. This is my creative vision. And Mars goes, okay, I'll see that this job gets done. That's what Mars does in our lives. So even if we have a really great Sun and the Sun is saying, yep, this job needs to get done and this job needs to get done and this job needs to get done, if Mars is in bad shape, he can't oversee the work. And if he can't oversee the work's not going to be done as well. So it's very important to look at Mars to see just how far the Sun is going to be able to go. Okay? Then Mars is linked to Saturn in that Saturn's debilitated in Mars' sign. And Mars is exalted in Saturn's sign, which is really interesting to have these two planets where one's debilitated and one's exalted in each other's signs. So when Saturn fails, which is in Aries, he's at his weakest point, he's failed the most. Mars is obviously going to become critical to make up for that failure because he rules Saturn. The only thing that's going to make up for Saturn being really in bad shape is Mars. And Mars has the ability to help Saturn in his bigger deeds, which is Capricorn, the 10th sign. And so he's exalted there. So when Saturn gets weak or causes problems, and again, Saturn problems are weak resistance to things. When we have a weak resistance and troubles come, then we have to get out Mars to manage those problems. Okay? So Mars manages the problems that Saturn can't prevent, and he oversees the visions of the Sun. And if a star of Mars is unable to do any of those, something's always going to slip past Saturn. Saturn's defenses, no matter how strong, is always going to allow for something in this world to cause some problems. Okay? So it's like, it doesn't matter how good your immune resistance is, or your hardiness is, eventually an infection is going to come along that's going to breach your defenses, and then you have to use Mars to deal with that. Okay? It doesn't, and so that's an example on a physical level of Mars needing to help out Saturn. It doesn't matter how, small your ego is, you still have one if you're born on Earth, right? So even if your misery is not great, as if you have a star of Saturn, when you have a star of Saturn, your misery becomes great, right? But let's say you don't really have a star of Saturn, so your misery is not great. That doesn't mean you're a perfect being. That doesn't mean you're enlightened and happy all the time, right? It just means your misery is not excessive. Being on Earth, we still have to train. We have to become stronger and better and fight our way into becoming happier people. And we do that on an inner level through Mars. We do it on an outer level through striving to make our lives better. So we still need to train. Even if we're not really miserable, wretched, Saturn-starved creatures, we still need to train to feel really good. And Mars is the planet that helps a person train. So if Mars is in low Lajjitaadi Avasthas, the person can't train themselves and work themselves into a better place. So that'll create some problems in the person. That'll cause some dissatisfactions and frustrations in their lives. Okay? So Mars is really, really important. And again, if Sun is weak or Saturn's weak and Mars is weak, then you have way less ability to overcome problems and, fight into a better state, to train into a better state, and way less capacity to do anything really wonderful in a person's life, to really build their kingdom, because not only might the sun not have vision if it's in poor Lajjitaadi Avashtas, any visions that are there, Mars is not really awake and ready to manage them, to oversee them. Okay? So the Avashtas of Mars are extremely important, for it's Mars who carries out the most important assignments of the sun, and it's Mars who protects the individual when the resistance of Saturn has been overcome. Mars in troubled Avashtas thus limits what the sun can do and causes the problems of Saturn to be more insurmountable. So Mars's Avashtas to some degree limit what the sun can actually do. And it's important to some degree that we oversee things in our life. Sometimes you'll meet people who've got a lot of vision, but they're constantly having other people oversee them. No one can oversee your vision as well as you can on your own, right? And then there's going to be less success. There's going to be more mistakes. A person has to be involved enough, oversee enough of their lives to make the most of their vision. And a weak Mars, a starved Mars, or a poor Lajjitaadi Mars reduces the person's ability to do that. Mars represents sattvam, which is strength of character. So this is a really important quality. We have our sattvam, our strength of character. And this is our strength of our good character. It's not our willfulness and pushiness and bulliness ability. It's our strength of character. It's a strength within us to do the right thing. It's a strength within a person to be a better person. The strength to act nobly through the proper exertion of both willpower and won't power. So we have to use both willpower and won't power. They're both different parts of Mars. The willpower part is the Aries part. The won't power part is the Scorpio part. That's why Scorpios are the most resistant, I won't do this, sign of all the zodiac. Okay? Won't power is more essential to improve Saturn problems, while willpower is most essential to support the inspirations of the sun. So with our Saturn problems, a lot of it has to do with I'm not going to do that, to abstain from doing things. I'm not going to get involved in that ego fight. I'm going to bite my tongue. Restraining ourselves, not just letting the ego have free reign over our life. So we deal with it, and even with like a physical level, I'm not going to do this thing which damages me physically, and so on. I'm not going to let myself get involved with these people who pull me down. So there's a lot of won't power involved to help with Saturn. And so through won't power, a person can avoid a lot of their Saturn problems if they have a afflicted Saturn, okay? And of course, the willpower of the sun is what gets a person really going with their activities every day. Mars in favorable Avasthas supports both of these, while in poor Avasthas he compounds any problems of the Sun and Saturn. And even if these are free of problems, he will create his problems of his own that really will impact a person's life. We're all here to train. If we're not training, what are we sort of doing? If we're not striving to use our willpower and won't power to be better people and make our lives better, what are we really doing with our lives? And that's Mars. It's really critical. Mars is Mangal. He's auspiciousness. And he's also considered to be born out of the earth. He's all the good things that come out of the earth, which means he's all the good things that we can grow into because of our life on earth. Because of this hard life on earth, which is always hard because there's more malefics than benefics, it becomes the perfect training ground if we have our Mars and we use our Mars with advantage to train to become better, stronger, healthier people. Without that the point of life is sort of lost. Okay? Willpower, self-restraint, and training, these are the things that make us better people. These things are all Mars. And those are the things that life brings out. Those are the gems of a life on earth. That's why people on the astral plane look down and say, oh, I wish I could be down there training and becoming a better entity, stronger, happier entity. But I'm just out here enjoying life on cloud 9. Okay? So that's why human birth is enviable, because of our ability to train. And we do that through Mars. So to have a starved Mars or a really shot Mars causes a person to lose that whole gift of life, that whole big important part of life. And Mars's Avasthas have much to say upon a person's ability to struggle towards a better existence, which is what we're here for, in all ways. A better existence physically, mentally, and emotionally. Okay? Mars importantly represents our associates, those with which we do things with such things as siblings, office mates, neighbors, teammates. Anyone we associate with is ruled by Mars. Okay? So we're constantly dealing with people, associating with people to get things done in our lives. Mars Avasthas show how well we can do that. Okay, so it's a huge area of life that if Mars's Avasthas are damaged, we're going to have problems with all these people. The Avasthas of Mars have much to say in regards to how well a person will get on with their associates, and as working with others is such a large part of life, an afflicted Mars creates many problems for a person. And you'll see this. Time after time I find people who are constantly having problems with people because of their afflicted Mars. It's very, very important. Kind of look at it, kind of is a spearhead of both Saturn and Sun. So if Mars is starved, Saturn are in bad shape, Mars and Sun aren't using their spearheads. They're not pointed in their best possible way, and so the person is going to be able to do less and be more frustrated. The bottom line of any poor Mars Avasthas is going to be a frustrated will to some degree. The person's not going to be strong in their power. Okay? On the other hand, we get a nice Mars, a nicely disposed, delighted Mars. The person's going to delight in the use of their strength, which is what Mars is, delight in the use of their power, delight in the use of their ability to train. But when it's starved, there's always going to be an element of frustration on that, a cap on that. That's going to immediately cause the person to have more problems, because there's nothing like frustration to cause a person's system to deteriorate. The same way, there's nothing like frustration to cause a person to have problems in their relationships, right? You know, when we're frustrated, we get irritable. So we could be frustrated at this, and then somebody comes up who has nothing to do with our problems. But that irritability will be reflected, dumped on them. And of course, then we've already started off on a bad foot with someone. So frustration, basically starved Mars, a frustrated will, is responsible for so much of the problems we have in life. Hugely amount of problems. And as I talk about them more, you'll see how they come up more. That's the bottom line. When you see a Mars starved, or which is going to be the main problem of Mars, and a troubled Mars, and a shamed Mars, or whatever, what you're dealing with is a frustrated will. And that frustrated will is going to impact the health. So I've seen lots of cases of people who've got good Saturn Avasthas, good Sun Avasthas, but really troubled Mars. Like Mars just totally shot down, and they have major health problems. Okay? Because when, and they've done it with medical science, they've seen how frustration so quickly damages the bodies, how frustration so quickly causes health problems. Then that energy, the energetic body, which is Mars, quickly gets deranged, and that immediately affects the emotional body, and immediately affects the physical body. All right? So you got to pay attention to these Mars, and in the order of importance to examine, I would say Saturn to get the foundation, Sun to get the Saturn to get the foundation of where they tend to suffer, right? Sun to get the foundation of how much potential they can realize. And then Mars, the next planet to look at after those two. Alright, so the next video will be on Saturn starving Mars, exactly. Thank you.